Now let me go straight to what I want to talk about. The Spirit of God has been interrogating me, has been challenging me and questioning me like, Amy, why are my people making me a plan B? Why are my people making me a plan B? When the people of the world, the people in the demonic realm, the people that are working for the enemy, that are working for Lucifer himself, they prioritize their tasks. They prioritize the task of destroying, the task of demoting, and even people that are employed for the enemy that may not necessarily even know that they are employed for the enemy, they're doing it full force. So the Spirit of God was really interrogating me like, Amy, why are my people not prioritizing me, the task that I've called them to do? People know, if you're a believer and you're a genuine follower of Christ, you know what you're supposed to be doing. You know the things that you're supposed to be doing to pull God to pull people to God. But for some reason, that thing that God is calling you to do is a plan B. It's not a plan A. And what God wanted me to share this morning with his people is that God shouldn't be a plan B. People of God, God shouldn't be a plan B. God is not an option. It shouldn't be an option. God should be a decision. You have to make a decision to follow Christ and commit to it all the way. God is not something you attend to in your spare time. You know, God is not something like, oh, if I have a spare time, or after I finish my work, finish my this, finish my that, attending to X, Y, and Z, then if I have spare time, then I will read my Bible. Then if I have spare time, then I will write the message, or I would attend to the needy. Whatever God has laid in your heart, that is priority. That is not, you have to schedule everything else around what you're supposed to do for God. So God has been tormenting me. Even me, God challenged me. Like, God started challenging me in my spirit that, am I your plan B? Because I found myself arranging my life, arranging God around my life. Like I fit in everything first and then God after. And when God challenged me in that way, I have made it a priority to, at least for the time being, and I'm praying the Spirit of God to strengthen me all the way, but I've made it a priority to focus on the things of God and everything that's asking me to do, committing to it. You know, the books that he's asked me to write, committing to it. And these messages that I'm sharing now, committing to it. This morning, I thought it was a fight for me to sit down here and record this message. It's not like I woke up in the morning and I felt like, yeah, I'm ready to go. I fought things to be here recording this message right now. If we look at scripture, we would see that the people that changed things, the people that brought us the gospel, the people that gave us the privilege to be able to have the Bible in our hands, God was their number one, if not their only one. Imagine, for instance, what would have happened if Moses decided to stay a prince. You know, he was living in privilege. Moses was living in privilege. Although he wasn't the next prince, but he was living a royal life. You know, he could have stayed in privilege and he could have still helped. You know, because there was a time he saw the way the Egyptians were treating his people, and then he killed one of the men. You know, so he could have just stayed in that zone. Moses could have stayed in that zone. And after he killed that man, and then he ran away for his life, he could have decided to stay in that land where he was and establish a family there and never return. But no, after God revealed himself to Moses, God told him to go back. Moses went back. Where would the children of Israel be today if Moses refused to go back to go and do the work of God? Many of us claim that we've received Christ. How can you receive Christ and not do his work? I don't understand. It's not possible. You cannot have seen God and not do his work. You need to question whether you've really seen God, because it's impossible. The little glimpses that I've seen of God, for me, it's very tormenting. I cannot help but to do what God has called me to do because of the glimpses I've seen of him. How can you claim you've seen Christ and you're not doing his work and you're not prioritizing the things that he's called you to do? When you wake up in the morning and think, I've got so much to do today, you don't think because you got so much to do today, you excuse God. And so let me go and focus on everything else I need to do. No, you wake up in the morning and think, I've got so much to do today, I must speak to God. You see the need. You see, like, it's a need. It's a need. Speaking to God is a need. It's not a choice. It's not an option. It's like you saying, I'm so thirsty, but let me go and exercise or go for a run or go and do so many other things, then I'll come back and drink. You don't have a need. You don't have a need for water. You don't have a need to quench your thirst. You're just saying, I'm so thirsty because it sounds like that's what everybody says when they wake up in the morning. Christians out here saying, oh yeah, I see God, God this, God that, God. You're like, it's not true. It can't be true. If really God has been telling you to do those things, you will do it. You won't say it like a religious thing, like you hear people saying it, all those religious languages, and you're just saying it. And your life is not proving it. When God says jump, you say how high? We shouldn't be delayed to obey the Lord. What is this attitude? What is this? I feel this fire in my guts. I wasn't even planning to speak with this amount of strength. But the more I'm talking, the more I feel like the Spirit of God is really stirring my heart. You know? Slow obedience is disobedience. If you're slow to obey the Lord, you have disobeyed the Lord. Because if you're slow to obey God, there are things that your obedience should have covered. There are people that your obedience should have covered. There are blessings that your obedience should have covered in that immediate time that you should have obeyed him. And when you obeyed him, when you obey God, when you choose to obey him, that's disobedience. You haven't obeyed God. You chose when to obey him. You didn't obey him immediately. You don't know what that obedience should have done at that time. So that's what God is laying in my heart. He is not a plan B. People of God, stop making God a plan B. Where we see the enemy and everybody, every system, the government, the people that are working for the enemy are prioritizing it. Look around you and see how the enemy is destroying people's lives, how they're out there to try and confuse people's mind, to pollute their minds, to move their minds away from the things of God. Any attempts that anybody makes to want to convey or accept God, you see how the enemy is pulling them away. And you're there. And you're there just keeping everything that God has called you to do, just keeping it to yourself. Securing yourself. What is the call? What is the call of the cross on your life then? You know? Let's think about that. This is the time that we need to really commit to the gospel. Let us prioritize God, people of God. It's not just about salvation. It's not just about making it to heaven. It's not just about that. Okay, you've received Christ and your salvation is secured in one sense. I don't even want to dibble and dabble into that, because I honestly believe that a life that has received Christ obeys Christ. A life that has received Christ does the will of God. You can't help but to do the will of God if you've truly received Christ. You know, I'm not saying we're perfect. I'm not saying we're not going to make mistakes along the way. I'm not saying we're not going to get it wrong. I'm not saying that everything's going to be clean and swept and nice. But what I'm saying is that you'll be making an attempt. You'll be walking in purpose. You'll be making an attempt to do the will of God. The will of God comes in so many different ways. The will of God, in one sense, is just living a sinless and a pure life. And then the will of God is in another sense, is you living in purpose and achieving the will of God for your life in that sense, you know. So I believe a life that has truly accepted Christ would want to please the Father. And there's nothing that pleases the Father more than when people accept Christ in their life. He says that he sent his only begotten Son that we may have life and have it abundantly. He says that he is patient with us, not wanting anyone to perish, but for all to come to know him, to come into him. That's the will of the Father for every single person in the world. So my brother, my sister, we've got to wake up, we've got to stand up, we've got to obey God. Stop making God a plan B. He doesn't like that. He detests that. All that God first, God second, and then you claim that God is first in your life. It's not gonna bang. May God help us to continue to make him our priority in all that we do.